Hey everyone, Phreak here. Welcome to my 8.5 mid-patch update rundown. It's going to be a pretty short one. There's only two major sets of changes. The first one, and probably the slightly more important one, are tweaks to how the support items gain gold. So they all lost the Bandit passive. Bandit was +1 gold if a nearby minion died that you didn't last hit. Whether your teammate got it or no one got it, it was still +1 gold for you, as well as the 3 or 10 gold on auto attack in an enemy champion, whether you're ranged or melee, respectively. The most notable use of this was Gangplank in the top lane. Unfortunately, and I think this is kind of bad timing, and I think they should have done something about this. This is 2 Gangplank nerfs in a row. They nerfed his Q mana cost, and that was actually meaningful in 8.4. And then here in 8.5, he also loses his best starting item in Relic Shield, which I think is pretty meaningful as well. That's pretty rough. I feel like Gangplank was fine after the 8.4 changes. He was playable, but not ubiquitous in pro play. And I thought reasonably well balanced in solo queue as well. Someone tweeted at me angrily, like, how dare Riot nerf this balanced champion named Gangplank? You're wrong. Gangplank was already plenty strong and became balanced as a result of the changes. Either way, this hurts Gangplank a lot, and I'm spending a lot of time on one champion. So let's talk about what has actually happened here and if it's fair or not to support players. Okay, so obviously getting gold for last hitting or just hitting enemy champions is quite nice. If you're playing Braum or Leona, well, especially if you're playing Leona, you're going to get that 10 gold in auto attack every time you all in, and that is money that you would have been earning. Alistair the same. A lot of these champions have reasons to auto attack you as a tank support. Tahm Kench a little bit, etc., etc. So that does hurt them ever so slightly in their gold income. But I want to point out something, by the way, is that the Bandit gold generation for minion death, the 1 gold every time a minion dies that you weren't around, is worth almost exactly 2 gold per 10 seconds. Almost exactly how much money that's worth. With the added caveat of, if you're playing with a Relic Shield, you're last hitting minions, thus not earning Bandit, and anytime that you miss a minion wave or a minion at all, because you're roaming, because you're warding, because you're recon, because you're doing any of the other things, you're missing out on that gold as well. So in actuality, Bandit was not worth 2 gold per 10 on any support in the game, because they're leaving lanes. There's a reason supports are under-leveled. It's because they're not in the minion lines as much anymore. So even though you're losing the Bandit gold for both autoing things and for the minion death, this is probably still a cut of less than 2 gold per 10. That's what I'm going to say as my read on what that actually means. But of course, it is still gold being lost, and so gold was added in other places. Well, for the Relic Shield start, an extra 2 gold per 10 was added to Targon's Brace, or the tier 3 version remnant of the aspect. I think this more than makes up for the gold lost. Now, it only makes up for the gold lost when you get to tier 2. But keep in mind, supports were rushing tier 2 every time anyway, because it gave them more gold generation. It was needed for the Sight Stone, and also going to happen regardless. So I think you still hit your roughly 10-minute Sight Stone regardless. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. And what's really nice is, by the end of the game, you'll probably have earned more money. That's the guess I'm going to make. It will hurt a little bit in the early game, those first 4 minutes where you're sitting in lane. Those are 8 mini waves you lose out on, and yes, that's a fair bit of gold you're not getting anymore. Getting to tier 2 will take longer, but tier 2 is stronger. All right, what about for Spellthief's Edge, Frostfang, and Eye of the Watchers? Let's first talk about this. Spellthief's Edge Tribute Gold is unchanged, but now the Frostfang is up from 15 to 20, so there is a very substantial uptick in gold income when you turn on a Frostfang, which is quite nice. That's actually a really meaningful difference. Do I think it will make up for the loss of roughly 2 gold per 10 from Bandit? And I'm going to say yes, if you're a good user of Spellthief / Frostfang, etc. I think that's actually pretty close. So, I believe you'll be in a pretty decent situation with this, and I think you'll be fine. Mages will get a pretty similar amount of money. What I'm really excited about is this stuff right here. All right, so number 1, the lockout penalty is now worse. Keep in mind, you already lost all the Bandit stuff, so that was gone no matter what. But if you're going to poach this item, like you're playing Evelynn jungle or you're playing mid lane, I don't know, Vladimir or top lane Vladimir, whatever, you poach this item, you now also lose the 2 gold per 10, the unchanged 2 gold per 10 on the item, in addition to tribute stack generation. So, okay, that's kind of nice. further hurts poaching. But what I really like, and I think is actually super, super clever, and I know the designer bounced around on what they were going to do, and then someone else had suggested this as the mechanic, and he's like, that's the one, that's genius, and I agree. The lockout, right, like Spell Thieves was the only one that had a way to cancel the lockout, and that was going up to Eye of the Watchers. And that is no longer the case anymore. Eye of the Watchers is no longer how you stop tribute generation from being turned off. Instead, it clears when you finish your quest, which for a true support is going to be about 10 minutes. And now, if you're playing Zyra or Brand, you don't have to go Eye of the Watchers. You don't have to spend 950 gold on 200 HP and like 10 ability power. You can spend that 950 on most of the hunting guys. And that is such a hugely amazing, wonderful change that even if this was a gold generation nerf for mage supports, this is still a buff for mage supports. They don't have to buy Eye of the Watchers. And now I know some of them out there rushed to Eye of the Watchers before 10 minutes and then their tribute didn't turn off and they felt good about it. And there was some degree of that, I know. There's some cases in which it's not actually a buff for mage supports. But really, in the most frequent cases, this is nice for mage supports. They can build the items they want a whole lot sooner, and that is awesome. So that excites me very much as a Zyra support player. I like Zyra support, I like Brand support. I'm excited about this. The one that I can't do math for very easily, and I don't have a very strong opinion on, is if the Nomad's Medallion / Remnant of the Ascended buff came through and makes up for the money. I really don't know exactly how many coins get dropped. Obviously, if we're, again, trying to make up for 2 gold per 10 seconds, that means, we're going to extrapolate this, it's 6 gold every wave, and if 1 gold coin drops every wave, right, 1 gold and 1 mana coin drops every wave, then this is equal. If less than those number of coins drop, then it's weaker, unless there's some under-the-hood coin drop rate things that they changed and didn't say in these patch notes. I actually remember when I was prepping for my 8.5 patch rundown, these things were actually in the patch, in the first draft of those patch notes that I was starting to work off of and do all my math on, and then apparently it got taken out, but now it got added back in. So I just kind of want to point out that also as one more thing about this set of changes, that it might seem like, whoa, out of nowhere, they just added this micropatch just like without thought, but this was actually in the works for like at least 2 patches, and I had seen several iterations of this set of changes. In fact, there was a case where like Targon's Brace and Nomads had like fail cases, not just Tribute. There was things about how like Tribute could like have stacking negative repercussions, but it would reset if you recalled, and like weird things like it wouldn't turn off tribute generation, it would turn off tribute itself if you left it too many times in a row, so you couldn't even earn the gold. And then he found a more simplified change, which I'm very happy about. Anyway, to recap what I think about this, just this is a buff for mage supports. I think this comes pretty close to approximating bandit income, considering this is basically, what, 5 gold every 12 seconds. That's how fast you can get a new tribute stack. Yeah, if you're reasonably good at all at triggering tribute, this is a huge buff to the gold income. This, I think, is a straight buff to the gold income compared to what Bandit gave you. And this one, I really couldn't tell you for sure. I'm hoping it remains close because last I checked, Nomad's Medallion and such were pretty weak items. When the design team gave them some movement speed, it made it a little bit better, but I thought it was still probably a little bit weak. And either way, whatever. All right, so next big thing is, of course, Kai'Sa came out, and Kai'Sa is very weak on release. 2 things I want to bring up. Number 1, stop whining about 500 range. Lucian, Kog'Maw, and Sivir all have 500 range and function just fine. Xayah has 525 and functions just fine. Deal with it. This is not the reason the champion is weak. The champion is weak and you're bad at the champion. Stop complaining about range. You're bad at League of Legends. The other thing, though, is marksmen in general have very shallow mastery curves, right? If you start here, you only get to about there, whereas like Aurelion Sol starts down below the video and ends way above your URL bar. Marksmen are fairly easy to learn to play. They all function pretty similarly. You care about auto-attacking. The spells are different. The playstyle can be different, but marksmen tend to be a bit flatter. Kai'Sa is probably a steeper one, like much like someone like Draven or Callista or Vayne, where they are a little bit specialized. There is some room for growth with some of the more complex marksmen. I think Kai'Sa is one of these, but even still, I think she is very weak for what you'd expect a day 1 AD carry to have. And I know that the Riot internal data had like sussed out AD carry versus mid versus jungle versus top, whatever. AD carry / bot lane is her best role. No one's surprised by this. The fact that it is her best role means that the range is not what's punishing her, because if the range was punishing her, she would do better in melee-heavy lanes such as the jungle and top lane, and yet that's not what's happening. So design team's pretty smart about this one. Anyway, Kai'Sa came in a little bit weak, so she's getting spot fix buffs. Great. Okay, so basic attack damage up by 2.5. And I want to point out, by the way, both her W and her R have total AD ratios, so it actually buffs the base value of those abilities, the base damages / shielding of those abilities. Also, Acathean Reigns early game is getting buffed. I think Qmax is always going to be the best skill order, regardless of your build on Kai'Sa, even AP Kai'Sa, because Q still has an AP ratio. It's the right choice. And some mana cost buffs for Q as well, so you can spam it a lot more. So basically, Kai'Sa got a lot better wave clear tools and a lot better short range trading tools. She's also to get in range. Acathean Reigns range, that's a mouthful. Acathean Reigns range is roughly her attack range, which is still 500. But let's go into the math real quick. As far as her attack damage, this is kind of zoomed in because whatever, this is what I chose to do. I want to point out that even though her base AD says it goes from 62.5 and it becomes 65, you literally can't, well, except for hitting turrets, I guess, you can't not deal Plasma's base damage, which starts at 7. And so I rolled in that 7 damage into what her actual auto attack damage is doing, because that's more fair to the math. Of course, it stacks up further over time, but hey, it means that she has 72 basic attack damage essentially at level 1, which is really high, and that's really nice. It's not quite like empowered Draven Q, but still pretty nice, and a 3 to 4% damage bump. And of course, she is someone who's going to be very likely building 100 or more attack damage pretty early on. I think Q evolve is the best evolve to seek early. I've been doing a lot of Essence Reaver plus Pickaxe with like my builds, just to get to the evolve a little bit earlier on and have that little bit of burst. Or if you're going to do like Infinite Edge into Ruin King or something, I think you should seek the AD pretty early on. Of course, it's going to deflate the need for this, or you know, the expected value of the bonus damage, but that's a surprise to no one because that's how it works for every AD carry in the game. Okay, that's cool. Next up, the cooldown and mana cost buffs to Acathean Reign. Here's the cooldown and cost buffs as I move my mouse out of the way. Again, pretty substantial, 20 to 7 to 0% for the cooldown. The cost down 18% is pretty meaningful. This just sort of matters, right? You're going to feel a lot better spamming Q in lane. I've always found that anytime I'm playing a champion for the first few times, I don't have a good gauge on what mana costs are, and I really frequently. I also tend to spam a bit too much in general as a player, and I have to get better at that as a skill. Hence the meme, you have no mana, XD, but still pretty meaningful here. And then one thing I also wanted to point out was, again, we talked about the fact that her base AD went up, and that means that W deals more damage, and to an actually surprisingly large degree. W's actual base damage on the ability starts at 20 and only gains 25 per rank, and its ability max last because the level incentive is really crappy. It's like 2 seconds cooldown and 25 base damage doesn't mean that much. Nothing else comes out of it. So that means it actually sits at rank 1 for a long time with the 20 whopping base damage, and the rest of it is carried by the 1.5 total AD ratio, which means actually gaining 2.5 base attack damage is actually a pretty meaningful amount of extra damage, which means that here is your new W damage output. And it's, again, about 3% higher, which is more than you'd expect for a base stat change, you know, to a random ancillary ability. So I kind of thought that was cool. I wanted to bring that one up. I've been having a lot of fun with Kai'Sa. I'm currently undefeated, I think 4-0 or 3-0 on the champion. Low sample of games, of course, but have been having a lot of fun playing her, and really do enjoy the assassin nature of it all, and it's cool. And I've been really liking the champion. I think Kai'Sa will remain pretty popular, and that is awesome. One other thing I want to point out is there's a capital S up here and a lowercase s there. Riot can't be consistent. How dare they? Garbage all around. Now, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.